Now this is my rig. Hello, welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Mockana Man at YouTube with another modelling video. Today we'll be doing another honing your airbrush skills video. I had a few questions in the last one, even though I have not been consistent in the series or uploading videos. My apologies. I will answer the few questions I got on Facebook and the last video, which I do remember very well. And most of it is regarding water traps, water in the line, and we'll draw some lines with acrylic paint. Since the last video we sprayed metallic acrylic, had a little trouble, and we actually got through it. This time we're just going to be spraying normal acrylic and just get some straight lines down. My airbrush has been hard at work painting all of the dry seat and some of my Gunpla Builders World Cup stuff, so I have not had the time to clean it. I have changed the nozzle and the needle as they got a bit gunked up at $1 a piece. Doesn't matter too much. You've covered all the videos about buying cheap parts, cleaning it out quickly on the go. I did strip it down twice for a clean down. I think I got a little paint run down the back of it, and it's slightly clogged the air valve. With a little thinner down there, it's fine. But after this week, I think I'm going to put it in the ultrasonic cleaner. Next week we'll have a brand spanking new clean rig. Though straight into compressors. Now when you buy a compressor, the most important thing is the compressor unit itself, a dial, a water trap, regulator. Now, in your hobby shop you'll see something like this quite often. It will quite often be a decent brand or a cheaper Delta Chinese job, though it'd be tempting to go for this because it'd be significantly $50 to $100 cheaper. And this airbrush compressor is my first. I had a little trouble because the controls of it was a bit tricky, though everything was not here and I did not have an easy go. This is the Sparmax model and it has treated me very well. It is still perfectly operational, and I've went out to a mate's place to airbrush some LARP shields. That served me very well for that. So this is the dial. Now the function of the dial is when the brush is hooked up and it's primed with air, it will tell you how much PSI is contained in the tank, and as you're spraying, when you push the air button down, it is actually telling you how much PSI it's coming out, and that's the important number. When we're drawing lines and we're doing detailing, we want it anywhere between around 10-15, 12-13 is a sweet spot. If we're cleaning, we're priming, we'll probably bang it up to 30. For other fine jobs, maybe slightly under 10. But these are some numbers that I have racking around my head, the type of numbers I like airbrushing. And this is the water trap. Water's going to come through, it's going to build up, and it's going to fill up in here, which I'll show my main one. And as it's fully primed, and you're not spraying out of your brush, you want to open it, which I don't even remember how to do in this, and it drains the water out. Now this is a very poor design water trap, and I'll explain. There is no regulator here, and people confuse this part as a regulator. You open it via twisting one of these knobs, set a gauge and close it off, and you can have a little air coming out, a lot of air coming out to drain it. And with a little air coming out, you can lower the PSI. Unfortunately, you cannot get an accurate number as an output, and all you're doing is leaking air out here and leaking air out of your airbrush. Very tricky. If you are to buy an airbrush and you're serious about your gunpla, scale modelling, whatever, it's best to purchase one that has a tank and a regulator. Let's look at a regulator. It's a bit dusty, it's a bit dirty, I apologise. Though this is an ideal Delta model, there's a lot others. The compressor sits on top of a very large tank, and the black knob up here connected to the water trap is your regulator. And when it's on, and I've demonstrated in videos, you can adjust it to the perfect PSI, and with the little nipple here, as it's on, you pull it up and it drains all the water out once it's fully primed. Now to prime this compressor, it involves filling up the whole tank. The best thing about the tank is it also is a bit of a water trap itself. Not a lot of water inside at the moment, but it can slosh. Another thing I recommend, and the gentleman from Runway 13 recommends, quick release adapters. So when you're done airbrushing, you can take it off and it'll drain all the air. But I like to have a spare tap, and all I have to do is open it and all the air comes out. Explaining this, owning a compressor, when you turn it on, you prime your airbrush, your compressor, you want to prime with no pressure, no air, so the piston goes up and down. This just fills up with air beautifully, and the pressure switches, compressor turns off, full of air. If it's already full of air, the first thing it's going to want to do, because the pressure switch isn't activated, is pump for air immediately, and it's pumping more air in something that has capacity in air. Not good. It's going to damage the seal of your piston in the actual motor, and that could losing pressure and not producing as much pressure out of your airbrush in future. So as a policy, when you're always airbrushing, drain all the air out of your airbrush and your compressor after working. What I always like to do is always do it via the water trap, and you're draining water at the same time, and you're not damaging the piston in your compressor. It won't have a tendency of just dying one day. You'll get a lot more years out of. So hopefully that explains a few things. And adjusting the PSI when it's primed, you hold the button down on your double action airbrush, spraying air out. The dial, as I explained to you, will tell you what PSI is coming out, the pressure that's coming out of the airbrush. And by turning this knob here, that will actually regulate and adjust what's coming out. If it's primed and you're not operating the airbrush and you're trying to adjust it, you're doing it a bit blind. Or at least with this model. Hope that helps. I'm going to be spraying some lines with Tamiya Flat Black. It's going to be mixed exactly 50-50 with the thinner, and it's going to be a bit runny. I'm going to talk some notes then, but we'll switch over to the table and have a play with that. Okay, so I mixed Tamiya Black 50-50 with paint. I've drained all the water out of my hose. It's important to go out of the hose as well as through the compressor. This was done by removing the hose from my airbrush and blasting just a shot of air to flush everything out. Flushed out the water trap, and we've got pretty much a perfectly functioning airbrush. Now the paint is very, very thin, so colouring in, not so ideal. Check this out. All airbrushing out. And it's very messy, very, very runny, very thick. On a physical surface, such as this, it's just going to run and be all disgusting, and you're not going to have a flat finish. Though that actually came out a lot nicer than I expected, to be fair. So it's overly runny, it's going to be slightly translucent, it's not going to be good for colouring in. How you would like to colour your model in, that I suggest when we're at 50-50. Very hard to control. Constantly move your airbrush while you're releasing paint in there at the same time. Air out. 12-13 psi. Only pull it back just absolutely a fraction. And you just dust on like that. And if you keep doing it, you'll eventually build up, and it'll be a nice solid colour. No running, no imperfections. If you want to go gradient effect, you can have a little fuck around, a little play. That wasn't ideal, but you get the idea. What do we want to do? Straight lines. So we're going to go through the usual method. Straight hand, 2-3 centimeters away from the paper, pulling the needle back ever so slightly, and a little bit of air, all the right mixtures. Let's try. Very thin. I haven't practiced for a while, a bit breaky up. But let's drop the PSI to below 10 and we'll see what happens. So 12 PSI may have been a bit strong. Let's try a smaller PSI. This is an experiment and just opened by me. Not a tutorial whatsoever, just advice. Let's see what happens. Not too happy, slightly splattery. We'll give it some strength. Let's try 9 PSI. A lot nicer. So let's have a look. I've been out of practice for a few months, but quite closely. Practically no spluttering, no mistakes. Lines are just pretty crooked and greatly change in intensity. Now the problem with heavily thinning is intensity is hard to control. The less thinning, the more standard definition or the defined line you're spraying will be easy to control in a solid black or a half black. Though if you only want to do a fine amount of shading, like the thruster tutorial I did, pre-post shading, these are the sort of techniques you want to get down if you can paint something that fine. And we'll put a Zaku head next to it. You easily colour in detail, even on something as small as a 1:144 scale head, and pull back and brush out the rest of the detail. We got a little shading going on over there. You can already at this stage, and I've only been practicing for a few months and not very well, you can already do some very, very cool effects and, you know, little thruster marks or, you know, carbon build up around a gun or a thruster or battle damage. Any sort of three-hand technique you can do, and we've not done a lot of practice. Done a little squiggly lines. I want to point out this little mistake here. I held the airbrush for like a fraction of a second, and if I was, let's say, doing some fancy camouflage or something, that would be considered ruined. A complete fuck up job. Things does get a bit fuzzy around here, not too straight. But yeah, I want to get more of a straight line, not as fuzzy, so thicker paint is in order for the next spraying tutorial. I just want to show off just, you know, X amount of thinner, X amount of paint, no testing, what you get. And this is the advantage of 50-50, a lot of thinner for acrylic. And like I said, I'll remind you guys, hold it for 2-3 seconds, it's going to run like crazy like this. It's going to look awful on your model. Pull back and very soft, very controlled painting. You can do some cool lines. Now I'm going to get back into the habit of doing this. I'll eventually try to get perfectly straight black pencil-like lines. Once I get a little better, I might try some more advanced techniques out of the airbrushing book I have. That all aside, thank you very much for watching. I hope I've put out some okay advice out there. Again, this is not a tutorial. People airbrush differently. Some people might have contradicting advice, which is okay. This is just the methods that I'm trying to teach myself how to airbrush, and advice that I'm giving to other people. Good look there. That looks kind of cool. So does that. Catch you guys later, and have a good one.